See, I am in general a big believer in hard work because
Hmm.
that has been a way of life for me, and I do instill that in my team as well. What I tell is ki dekho, hard work never killed anyone, and if it doesn't kill you, it only makes you better and stronger.
Varun is a three-time entrepreneur and tech innovator, solving for India's 100 million plus farmers through OTP. Bringing food from farm to fork in 12 hours, OTP supports 20,000 plus farmers and is clocking an annual revenue of more than 100 crores. Please join me in welcoming Varun to the podcast. Hey Varun, glad to have you here.
Hi, Aviral. Pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for inviting me.
So Varun, Coffee with Karan has begun again. We have shamelessly copied the rapid fire format. I don't know if they do it anymore. Um, but we'll start with a few fun questions in, in,
Please.
in the rapid fire. If you could be a professional in any other field unrelated to your current work, what would it be?
मैं शायद कहीं पढ़ा रहा होता. I think
You'd be a
that
teacher.
is.
If you were the AJVC host, what's one question you would ask yourself?
So you just described your journey ki how you started out small and then you started podcast. So I would
Hmm.
ask myself कि अब अपनी bucket list में टीवी वगैरह डालते हैं मतलब.
Nice. Good one. Bootstrapped versus funded.
I think it doesn't matter here. I think the objective should be clear and these are only means to achieving that end objective. मतलब if funding gets you there, why not?
Hmm.
And if not required, then don't take. But I think the objective, that the end should define the means and
Understand.
not vice versa.
What do you think about working 70 hours a week?
See, I am in general a big believer in hard work because
Hmm.
that has been a way of life for me, and I do instill that in my team as well. What I tell is ki dekho, hard work never killed anyone, and if it doesn't kill you, it only makes you better and stronger.
Yeah.
So I don't attribute an hours to it, but मतलब मेरे को लगता है कि यार in general, if you want to get anywhere, you want to achieve something, you have to get out of your comfort zone, and for that you have to work hard. And sometimes it may mean extra hours, sometimes it may mean more creative thinking. It could be a combination.
Understand. How would you define your company's culture with three terms, adjectives?
So as a company, see, we are, uh, we talk a lot about the impact that we are creating, Aviral. So we talk about, the food wastage that we are bringing down. We talk
Hmm.
about the additional income we are able to generate for farmers and for our resellers. So we talk about the impact, and I tell everyone ki, you know that should be like a driving force which you think about. जो मैं काम कर रहा हूँ, is it creating a meaningful impact on the world.
Hmm.
तो ये I think थोड़ा external perspective से है. The other thing that I also, from a company culture standpoint, I think we are very very transparent. तो मतलब it's everyone. तो recently, like, we did a survey. The standard survey नहीं होते कि how many of you know कि company का विजन क्या है,
Hmm.
एंड मैं अपने काम से उसमें कैसे कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा हूँ,
Right.
थिंग्स लाइक दैट, राइट? स्टैंडर्ड सर्वे क्वेश्चंस. तो इसमें yeah, we had an NPS of like 90 plus, so like everyone knows कि क्या करना है, क्यों करना है, and how it is leading to that end objective. So I think it is very transparent. So I would like to describe that as an adjective. And last but not the least is that I do tell everyone to be very very ambitious.
Hmm.
कि, we should always, and the company is continuously creating opportunities, and in an ideal world, I would want that कि वो opportunities सारे existing लोग जो company में है अगर वो fill करें, तो nothing like it.
Right.
I think broadly, you can kind of talk about the company culture in these three terms, in terms of the impact that we are creating, a very transparent culture so that everyone knows कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं और क्यों कर रहे हैं, and then having that ambition or that hunger to get there.
Understand.
Uh,
That's
so yeah,
awesome. Very clearly articulated on the culture. I think it shows that you've been at it for some time and you've given it some thought.
काफी
Um,
दिन से धक्के खा रहे हैं अविरल. वो उससे सीख जाता है आदमी कई
करेक्ट,
बार।
करेक्ट, करेक्ट। ये 70 आवर्स के बारे में रोना धोना नहीं होता। I think, I mean, आप, you're probably slightly older than me, but I mean, we are all at least a decade plus out. Um, Maybe like free money and zero interest rates have made a lot of us lazy and expecting a lot of things, but life's hard and it takes a lot of hard work. And I firmly subscribe to, doing more, um, and trying to achieve your best. So धक्के धक्के खाना और जिंदगी का पार्ट ही है, आई थिंक। आई थिंक
And I think you know those times actually are the times when you learn the maximum. So
एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट।
like in our journey of you know like 7 odd years that we have been in business, and we've been trying to solve for the fruits and vegetable supply chain up मतलब
राइट।
7 साल से ऊपर हो गए हैं. But I'll tell you like the initial 4 years which were like our toughest years when capital was not there, and we ourselves would spend a lot of time on the ground. मतलब फार्मर से मिल रहे हैं, मतलब अलग अलग तरह के उससे मिल रहे हैं. तो आई थिंक दैट लर्निंग is learning which kind of defines my thinking today also. I think sitting in this office तो देखो इतना ही हो पाता है,
राइट।
but I think the grunt work that you do, it does pay back.
And finally, on the rapid fire, what is one truth that you believe in, which very few people agree with you on?
Yeah, so for example, there is a lot of talk, especially around uh, COVID, the work from home culture kind of picking up and so on. So, I think work from home culture is like a doom loop. Matlab,
Okay,
kind of takes you takes you down. So, so that is one thing which I'm not so sure
other people
whether a
agree
lot
with
of
you on.
people will agree with me, but yeah, that is my belief.
Yeah, maybe I also disagree with you on that, so it's good. I think,
Yeah, you
but
can
like,
relate to it now.
yeah, yeah, no, no, of course. I mean, I think it's variable and it depends. When you're creative and you're in a team kind of setup, probably required. Like my role is a bit more individual contributor, and we are like wolves sometimes. So it's probably different. Again, I think there's no one right answer. But
Yeah,
let's jump in.
my only view to that is that I think like we talked about culture and so on. So a lot of culture forms when you meet, you talk, and
Correct,
some conversations go beyond work.
correct,
And I think for the brief periods that I did work from home, during the peak COVID waves, Aviral,
right,
तो उसमें somehow I felt that the relationship had gotten too transactional. मतलब
right,
फोन उठाया, काम की बात करी, बंद कर दिया.
correct,
And तो but that was my feeling, and obviously like I said, I don't expect कि आप मेरे से agree करो, ऐसा कुछ नहीं,
correct,
and I know कि
correct.
शायद बहुत लोग नहीं करेंगे.
Correct,
But हाँ, मेरे को ये लगता है कि that just that bonding and all of that you form just by meeting face to face, talking, brainstorming. I think वो थोड़ा वर्क फ्रॉम होम में मुश्किल होता है, कल्चर बनाना मुश्किल हो जाता है, मेरे को ऐसा
correct.
लगता
Yeah, no, absolutely could be. Let's jump into your background. You have a very unique journey, and I think like every founder we speak to has a different story, and we'd love to get into your story. You're the son of an IFS officer. You've traveled around the world, and like we were joking before we started that you've gone from foreign to farm. So can you talk about that journey, and then getting into IIT Delhi, getting a really good rank, getting computer science. Maybe if you can talk through that, would be would be awesome.
है. हाँ, sure, I can talk about that. So as I was saying, Aviral, that my dad being in the foreign services, so we would spend a lot of time. It was almost like for 3 years you would be posted outside in some country, and there my dad used to be posted in the embassy there, basically जो वहाँ की embassy होती है. And so 3 years outside, then 2 to 3 years back in India, and then this kind of repeated itself. So the few interesting things during or such a setup teaches you is that you learn to, I would say, connect with different kinds of people, and हर जगह देखो लोग अलग होते हैं. So for example, when I was in Austria, Vienna for a bit, so most of the people there were मतलब whites were mostly there from either local in Vienna or nearby countries, Germany से हो गए, whatever other nearby countries in and around Austria. And then, like for example, when I was in Oman for a bit, which is Middle East, so there we used to study actually in an Indian central school. तो वहाँ Indians ज़्यादा थे, but
Hmm.
obviously from all walks, मतलब South Indians, North Indians,
Right.
हर तरह के लोग थे.
And Oman has a higher density of Indians as well. I think Middle East is
It does.
generally
Middle East in
has a
general does,
lot
हाँ.
of
And
Indians.
when I was in Austria, तो वहाँ तो it was very गिने चुने आप लगा के चलो. It was
Right.
mostly whites that were out there. And so I think with different with such a setup, it just teaches you a lot to accommodate the variabilities, and especially also what happens is that when you come back to India, na, so what happens, um, or what any person in this in this profession, as you see it, or as a child of a parent who's in this profession, so when you're outside, you're a diplomat. So a diplomat is very well treated. Matlab, there are
Right.
like privileges everywhere. Matlab, as a diplomat, for example, when you cross borders, your cars are not checked.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they are checked. So there are a lot of privileges that you get as a diplomat. But when you're in India, then you're normal. So
Hmm.
there, you would stay in government accommodations, which are
Hmm.
obviously, nice. And when you come back to India, so you're normal. You're like
Yeah.
anyone. So you learn to.
Is this part of like the diplomatic immunity thing? I mean, I'm sure you um, must have like this whole set of things that are given to an IFS officer.
हाँ. So there. See, when when you're posted there, you get to study in the best of schools. The fees are very high, but obviously the government takes care of that. So that's
Right.
not something that you have to take care of. Then the places or houses where you stay, those are nice houses, and again you don't have to bother for the rent and all. Again, the government takes care of that.
Amazing.
So naturally, you're very privileged there. And as a
Right.
diplomat, like I said, you get privileges at every point. Like
Hmm.
there are like different queues. You're not checked, and it's like an obligation, right? So it is like a diplomat is like a guest in the host
Of
country,
the
and
country.
you treat that person a little
Different.
differently. So but when you're in India, you're like normal. So matlab, एक Indian diplomat in India is not a diplomat.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
So that is
He's a civil servant. Hmm.
normal hai.
Hmm.
So you kind of learn to accommodate the differences ki हाँ,
Hmm.
there you'll be treated with certain privileges, but when you're
That's
back,
very
you
interesting actually. That's very interesting.
हाँ, and then when you're back, you have to realize कि मतलब वो कभी मिलेगा कभी नहीं मिलेगा.
Yeah.
So you can't
So,
get used to it.
yeah. So you're grounded also. You
हाँ,
see the good life,
grounded.
but you're also grounded. Very interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. So that is one, and then um, so last I was in Austria, Vienna till ninth grade, and then I moved back to India in 10th. So that was a pretty tough time for me because the education there is relatively easier and it's not as tough as it is here. So I moved back. I had to immediately learn Sanskrit, Hindi, which was not even a part of the curriculum there. So it was harder, and obviously I
और आपको
came.
हिंदी नहीं आती थी?
नहीं, बात तो हम हिंदी
Uh,
में करते थे, बट लिखते नहीं थे
नहीं
ना
थे.
वहाँ पे.
Right.
जैसे फॉर द 3 years that I was there, like from 6th grade to 9th grade,
You
तो
never wrote
I didn't
Hindi.
write
Yeah,
any
of
Hindi.
course.
I mean, I wrote like French, German, so that
Hmm.
I learned because that was the language there,
Right.
the additional language other than English. But Hindi and Sanskrit तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं थी.
Hmm.
So moved back and immediately हिंदी में मतलब फेल हो गए. नहीं आती थी मतलब.
uh,
So and then immediately 10th kind of came, and in 10th grade, like Sanskrit is a very scoring subject, so everyone kind of advised to be Sanskrit to le lo. And so I took that also. So it was like a big ramp up. But anyway, 10th grade I did fine, and then after that, just with the friend circle came a lot of advice कि भाई engineering कर लो, IIT में अगर हो गया तो आगे
life set
नौकरी
है.
वगैरह की, हाँ, नौकरी की टेंशन नहीं रहेगी,
हाँ.
मतलब सर्वाइवल की टेंशन नहीं रहेगी. तो
Correct.
that was the motivation. And So yeah, with a bunch of like-minded friends, we started preparing. I did most of my preparation, self-study tha mera mostly. But I enjoyed it. Specifically, I think maths and sciences I had a natural flair for. And my dad did have a backup plan. So he said कि अगर तेरा नहीं होता ना, I'll try to. There's like a foreign students quota, तो वहां से कोशिश कि तेरा हो जाए. मैंने कहा चलो कोई नहीं, एक बार पहले तो खुद करके देखते हैं. अगर नहीं
हाँ,
करा तो फिर we'll see.
right.
But anyway, yeah. So I think that happened, and that was very well way beyond what I had thought I'll be able to do. So no regrets there.
And why IIT Delhi and not the best college, which is IIT Bombay? Sorry, of course I'm from there, so I'm just kidding.
So in our in our times,
IIT
मतलब
Kanpur है क्या?
हाँ, आईटी
हाँ,
बॉम्बे नहीं था हमारे
हाँ,
टाइम
हाँ,
पे.
of course.
The top 10 JEE ranks in our time, all of them went to IIT Kanpur.
Oh,
तो IIT दिल्ली का कंप्यूटर साइंस 11वीं रैंक से खुला था हमारे टाइम पे. So
अच्छा,
that is what happened. And so for me, it was, matlab, I would say, see, it wasn't like Delhi was closer.
right.
I just said, yeah, Delhi better hai.
Hmm,
And, I know that in Kanpur, fundamentally, the work that they would do was relatively better in terms of research and all.
hmm,
But मैंने कहा ठीक है कोई नहीं, this is not as, it's not so bad either.
hmm.
मतलब ठीक है, delta difference है, like 19-21 का फर्क है. And so I chose IIT Delhi computer science, and yeah,
Yeah,
that
my
was.
parents are from IIT Kanpur, so I think their
अच्छा.
uh, the the golden period was from the beginning almost till probably early 2000s. उसके बाद
हाँ.
it started to change when a lot of the quota people said कि हाँ go to Bombay, go to Delhi, and then I think Bombay and Delhi really grew as cities, and Kanpur got a bit left behind. And then people started looking for opportunities in India as well, because in my dad's batch, for example, or even my mom's batch, 85% of the people went abroad. I think now it's probably the reverse. The 85 stay and 15 go. Um, Computer science, I think it's still a little 50-50, but the overall batch, I think a lot more stays in India. And
In our batch, like a lot of people went to the US and came back, so
came back. Okay,
including myself.
okay, got it. So, how were those 4 years? When did the seed of entrepreneurship, get sown in your head, or you don't really remember a specific time? How do you decide to move from academia or the corporate world into starting a company?
Broad thoughts around that started coming in IIT only. And
Okay.
वैसे in those days, the startup culture was not that prevalent. Just so that, just to remind you, आपको तो
How
याद नहीं होगा उस टाइम का.
how far away are you from the Bansal batch? The
I'm
big
3 years senior. So
CS
I
senior.
think,
Okay.
so I'm 2001.
Okay.
In our days, see, I used to toy around with a few projects, here and there. Just software bana diya,
Hmm.
make it available on the web and so on. I think these are things which toying around that had started,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't say it was like anything, serious per se.
Hmm.
But like, we would toy around, ki haan,
Hmm.
theek hai, you know, uh, because a lot of portals in those days were coming up, and I remember uh, when I was at IIT, na, so I think 99 mein, so 2 years into college, Google I had heard of the first time around.
Hmm.
फिर when तो उससे पहले हम लोग Yahoo सर्च और Alta Vista सर्च यूज करते थे.
Correct.
It was very clunky. उसमें what used to happen was कि you have to submit your website, and then वो उस पे कुछ ranking करता था.
Correct.
And if you don't submit your website, then it never shows.
Hmm.
And obviously the search took much longer also, and the results were very poor. And then when I saw Google for the first time and I used it, it was like, your search happened in 0.1 seconds, and the results were like awesome. So it was like, oh,
Wow.
magic, ये कैसे हो
Uh,
गया?
uh,
So, you start to see these things, and then I think in those days also, ekad startups around like web portals had come up around like second-hand books and so on. तो मतलब थोड़ा-थोड़ा शुरू हो गया था. So I
right.
was toying around with a few projects then, but really it happened when after college I went to Silicon Valley, California. मतलब Sunnyvale was where I took up a job offer from NetApp, which is Nasdaq listed
Right.
company.
Just
And
briefly for our listeners, what does NetApp do? I mean, I know what it is, but I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think
So,
anyone said.
so NetApp is in the data storage systems space. So, for example, a lot of the storage that you would use on AWS, for example, जैसे
Hmm.
आपकी S3 storage होगी. So the servers at the back end where all of that is stored, backups between those servers, key, if there is a disaster in one, then the data is replicated to
Right.
another, and किसी का data गुम ना हो. And the fact that the access to that um, and like if you use PCs and all, कि PCs में defragmentation हो जाती है, then
Yes. Yes.
data access हो जाता है. तो despite disks getting filled up and so on, your access to that should not get impacted. So,
Hmm.
so a lot of work happens around that. How do you take terabytes and petabytes of data, and all of those are stored. So that is what NetApp used to do, and it had specialized operating systems and machines just optimized for doing data work.
Understand.
So, so I got placed into NetApp. So this was my that is where I got placed while at IIT, and got placed into their headquarters, which was in Sunnyvale only. They did not have a Bangalore office at the time. They
Okay.
did open one, few years after that though. And so while I was there, you started hearing all of these stories कि ये startup paper napkin पे बनी थी, इस restaurant में खुली थी.
Hmm.
And NetApp itself had such a story. So,
Right.
the founder himself had told कि एक restaurant था Hobbies करके वहाँ पे. So he said our
Okay.
first business plan was on a paper napkin and so on.
Yeah, and VC by then in the US was almost 25 to 30 years old. Like Apple and Don Valentine, Arthur Rock, these guys were already established legends.
So Don Valentine was the investor in NetApp actually.
NetApp.
So yeah,
Wow.
he himself was involved at the time. While I was at NetApp, few years into it, मतलब broadly I again was starting to toy around different ideas कि ये कर सकते हैं, ये कर सकते हैं. Uh, and then um, like I left NetApp after working with them for 5 years, and broadly thought process यही था. मेरे को लगा यार जब ये करना ही है, तो आई हैड लॉट ऑफ फ्रेंड्स जो कोई मास्टर्स के लिए जा रहा था, कोई पीएचडी के लिए जा रहा था, कोई वहाँ एमबीए के लिए जा रहा था. एंड आई वाज लाइक यार देखो करना तो यही है, अब करना है जल्दी जल्दी करते हैं. मतलब लटका के क्या फायदा है. इफ यू वांट टू डू इट जस्ट डू इट एंड आगे बढ़ो. सो दैट वाज काइंड ऑफ द मोटिवेशन फॉर मी.
Okay. And so, what was your first company about, and why did you pick that?
Sure. So see, my first company was called Wirkle Technologies. That was
Hmm.
in the mobile apps की space में थी. And I'll just give you a quick brief. So this is, let me remind you, this is 2004 2000 2004 2005 है.
Yeah.
So in those days, देखो आईफोन भी पैदा नहीं हुआ था और एंड्रॉयड भी पैदा नहीं हुआ था.
Correct.
तो what we had in those days was एक तो नोकिया का सिम्बियन ओएस करके होता था. तो few devices had some smartphone niche capability. मतलब कुछ कुछ आप उस पे apps लिख सकते थे.
And BlackBerry.
हाँ. एंड देन ब्लैकबेरी आ गया था. बिल्कुल यू
Hmm.
राइट. सो ब्लैकबेरी वाज देयर. सो सिम्बियन था, J2ME था. मतलब ब्रॉडली एक दो प्लेटफॉर्म ही थे. एंड yeah, so that was what the company was all about, ki how to take existing content and data which is available on the web and make it usable on the small
On
screens.
mobile. Hmm. What they call now scalable, or I think there's another technical term for it, responsive,
Responsive. Correct.
responsive web.
Correct.
Um, oh, awesome, man. So, how long was that, and did you raise money?
We raised smallish from
And
friends
this
and
was
family.
US or India based?
Started in the US, but then I moved back to India.
Okay.
So we raised uh, um, a smallish round from friends and family. Wasn't very big, from people that we knew. And but after a while, what started happening was that with this technology that we developed, a lot of valley-based startups would approach us here. Like they would have different use cases. जैसे मान लो किसी की कोई sales force है. So
Hmm.
they would say, look, they are on the field. Now I need all of this information, them being able to punch these details on the phone itself, on the
Right.
go. So we would quickly, I would say, take our platform and, we would had a base foundation, then we would do like some customization on top of it, just say it would work for their use case. And then we started making money. So it wasn't long before, I would say the revenue was coming in, and broadly, we were not losing money.
Right.
तो मतलब मैं ये नहीं कहूँगा बहुत drastically profitable थे, but we weren't
Not
losing.
losing. Hmm.
So it kind of after the, I would say, early friends and family round, उसके बाद company had started generating cash.
Understand. And you started another company after this. What was the motivation? Did you think that your first company had run its course? What was the thought process?
In the case of Virkle, Aviral, see what uh, after running it 4-5 years, तो अब तो cash अच्छा generate करने लग गई थी.
Hmm.
But obviously, see the market situation had also changed
Hmm.
क्योंकि अब तब iPhone, Android prevalent होने लग गए थे.
Correct.
Our आप ये भी मान सकते हो कि like the relevance of what we had done was for the devices at the time, and when the macroeconomic environment changed, तो
Hmm.
relevance भी देखो कम हो रही थी.
Hmm.
तो फिर लगा कि या तो कुछ और ही करो completely different, या फिर मतलब exit कर लो.
Hmm.
तो for one of our clients, we made us a good offer, and then we took it and we exited. So the name of the company was Location Labs. They were a
Okay.
Silicon Valley company only. And post the exit, then I was kind of running their India business.
Understand.
So that was how that panned out. For 3 years, I did that. So 2006 was when I started Virkle. 2011 tak chalaya for 5 years, and then 3 years I was the India head for Location Labs.
Understand.
That was a very comfortable time in the sense कि see business pressures थोड़े कम हो गए थे because
Right.
largely there was a bigger ship that was running,
Yes.
and a lot of processes were driven from the US, and मतलब लाइफ काफी कंफर्टेबल हो गई थी. तो और आदत थी नहीं इतने कंफर्ट की. तो मतलब यू काइंड ऑफ स्टार्ट टू फील कि अगर ऐसे ही रहा तो निकम्मे तो नहीं हो जाएंगे कहीं. एंड इन माय अर्ली 30s ओनली मैंने कहा इट्स टू अर्ली इन लाइफ टू
Yeah.
become so useless. um Anyway, so so 2-3 years into it, I then did my second startup. It was called MyGreenbox.
Okay.
वो ग्रोसरी डिलीवरी में था, largely emanated from my personal thing कि मैं घर पे ग्रोसरी ज्यादा कराता नहीं था, और
Hmm.
मेरी वाइफ बोलती थी कि भाई यार तुम करते नहीं हो ग्रोसरी वगैरह में, हेल्प नहीं करते हो. मैंने कहा यार चलो कुछ इस तरीके से सॉल्व कर लेते हैं,
Uh,
दोनों का
and that
काम
time
कर.
it was pretty hot. I mean, I kind of joke that
Right.
grocery delivery becomes hot when there's a bull run in the private markets. It would have happened in the 1990s with, uh, I think there was this company that raised millions of dollars and then went bust.
हाँ, वेब वैन.
Webvan. I remember. So Webvan went bust. Then 2014, 15, 16 was Runner, Tiny Owl, Swiggy. Bunch of these
फूड
guys
ग्रुप.
also start food. Yes,
या
hyperlocal. I mean, anyway, sorry, go on. So आपने grocery delivery. You were 10 years ahead, if you want to say, of
आई
your
डोंट
time.
नो 10 years अहेड बोले. सी मैंने तो देखा है लाइक यूर सेइंग ग्रोसरी डिलीवरी के ऐसे ना फेजेस
Phase
आते हैं.
आते हैं, correct. सबको
सो
लगता है कि
लाइक
हम घर में बहुत जल्दी grocery दे सकते हैं. I don't know why there is this thing, because at the end of the day you are giving fruits and vegetables only. It's not going to become uh, digital. But anyway, हाँ तो आप बताइए. You started a grocery delivery company.
largely it came out from I would say personal, it was motivated by personal reasons like this. So anyway, I actually at the time Big Basket had started in Bangalore. I was hoping
Hmm.
कि वो दिल्ली आ जाते तो problem solve हो जाती.
Right.
But I think in their early days, if you recall, so they spent few years in like Bangalore, and then उसके बाद थोड़ा मुंबई कुछ टाइम के लिए थोड़ा सा किया था. But they
Hmm.
spent a good amount of time just perfecting the model in Bangalore before venturing out into other cities. तो
Hmm.
after a while मेरे को लगा यार अब ऐसे वेट करने करके क्या होगा, करते हैं खत्म करते हैं.
Hmm.
So uh, got it started, and I raised a small angel round, like a few crores. It's not was not a very big round, but that was enough to get us off the ground. So
Right.
got the app running, got the ops setup done, and then started serving in Gurgaon. So that that process got that started, and ran that company for a year. So,
Hmm.
so ran that company for a year, and then started in 2014, and 2015 was when I exited that to Grofers. So
Oh, you
broad,
sold it in a year.
only a
Hmm.
year. So broadly, what had happened was that, and you might recall this, Aviral, कि ना at the time actually grocery बहुत heat up हो गई थी. I'll tell you a lot
Correct,
of
correct,
companies that
correct.
come up.
Yes,
So Big
yes,
Basket तो थी ही, Grofers, raised a,
huge
I would
round.
say successive rounds which were in very quick succession actually.
Yes,
पेपर टैप भी एक थी उस टाइम
yes,
पे. देन देयर वर सम स्मॉलर प्लेयर्स उस टाइम पे, लोकल बनिया होता था,
correct,
तो कई थे मतलब. एनीवे, सो वी आल्सो काइंड ऑफ फिगर्ड दैट कि and we were feeling the heat also कि when you kind of start competing in grocery, and uh, for a lot of well funded players, when it becomes a price play,
correct,
तो फिर मतलब for a smaller company इतना आसान नहीं होता मतलब. And specifically when I would say the differentiation मतलब बहुत ज्यादा ना होना,
correct.
तो then you start to feel the heat. So anyway, तो उस दौरान I knew Albinder is from IIT Delhi only,
Okay,
uh, and so he and I spoke. He suggested an offer of 2.5x of what I had raised my funds at,
right.
and that was good. We did the deal. The investors were happy because in less than 1 year they
They
got
got
what
a
they
very
were
good
selling.
markup. Hmm.
So they were happy, and then for us, I and our team got absorbed into Grofers, and then I was the CTO there. So I was there
Okay,
as CTO for 1 year.
okay, understand.
Yeah.
And just a question. You were doing a very digital tech first, um, high tech play when you started your first company, and then you were suddenly doing an ops intensive, very Indian problem. I would say more ops and supply demand than tech. Was it because of where you were living? And why I'm asking this question is the overarching reason is that a lot of people say, why don't Indians make these high tech companies? And my answer always is we have much lower level of problems to solve. So was that would that be a fair reasoning?
Actually, see, when I was in the US now, so obviously we would continuously ideate, and the environment that you're in influences your thought
Correct,
process and the
correct.
problems that you're going to solve. So in the US, the one thing that I felt was that the problems that we were often trying to optimize was, जैसे think about it, right? जैसे आप जब आप app एक बनाते हो, तो you talk about कि how you should make it like a single click checkout, or
Hmm.
कि इतना comfortable हो, like AI, right? So you just
Hmm.
type a sentence and you get all the
Uh,
information you like.
yes,
So like really really comfortable. Um, so often I would think when I was in the US here, we are solving all of these problems, which is great, but coming back from India, मतलब I think the problems there are so much more grave, right? मतलब ये
Hmm.
तो क्या है यार, 2-3 क्लिक ज्यादा कर लेंगे, कितने कैलोरी एक्स्ट्रा बर्न हो जाएगा.
uh,
I would I would question that कि हाँ मतलब you know why are we working on problems which, I mean, for that part of the world, those are probably real problems, but
yeah,
if
they're
you look at it from,
optimization problems rather than binary
यहाँ मुझे
creation
तो ऐसा लगता है
problems.
सुपरफिशियल प्रॉब्लम है यार, मतलब
Very
ना
interesting, actually,
यार
the way
यार.
you're looking at it. Hmm.
So I just felt that this was a real problem. I did feel that technology has a good role to play, but as I went deeper into the business and as we implemented, so I also realized that कि इसमें actually technology, the depth that technology, or I had envisioned that technology would have, wasn't really there, in the sense
Hmm.
कि देखो क्या है ना, if you look at it from an Indian mindset, and we all know that the Indian market ऐसे price sensitive है, और वो है, तो वो क्यों है, वो इसलिए है क्योंकि भाई हमारे मतलब पर कैपिटा कम है, मतलब इन
Hmm.
जनरल पैसे कम बनाते हैं हम, तो हमारे लिए
Hmm.
पैसे की ज्यादा वैल्यू है, हम
Hmm.
थोड़ा सा पैसा बचाने के लिए 1 किलोमीटर आगे तक चल सकते हैं,
Hmm.
दैट इज फाइन. तो if you look at it from that standpoint, then you see कि even if I make like the picture perfect app with a few optimized clicks and so on, and really give the convenience कि इससे पहले कि आप सोचो आपको ये चाहिए, मैं बता देता हूँ आपको ये चाहिए,
Right.
right? But because the ground level problems are much bigger, that in the end, like if your pricing is better, then consumers do go that route कि हाँ ठीक है यार, इसके
Hmm.
rate better है, कोई बात नहीं, I have to do a few clicks more, but that is fine, I'll live with it, no problem.
Hmm.
So that was I would say the reason to solve this problem was that it seemed like a genuine problem worth solving, and I felt technology would play a really big role. But as competition heated up, I realized that technology का ना इसमें limited ही role है,
Role, right.
given the grand scheme of things, where what people want is something different.
Correct.
So हाँ, so that was um, to answer your question basically.
Understand. Makes sense. And I think OTP is a lot closer to your previous startup.
हाँ,
How
very
did
close.
that happen? What was the initial motivation? And can you talk about what OTP does? How has the journey been? Early days, most importantly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, see, I was at Grofers for a year. We did all kinds of grocery, including fruits and vegetables. And fruits and vegetables was a 2% contributor to the business and a 20% contributor to
Contributor
the
to
complaints.
margin. Hmm.
Complaints
Complaints.
बहुत आते
Oh,
हैं.
okay.
हाँ, so see, largely the problem in this category is ना कि it's a very rapidly degrading kind of inventory. मतलब वो
Yes.
हर घंटे दूसरे घंटे it changes its form. And then what happens is that if your supply chains in general are designed for like conventional FMCG, which would go well, a few weeks, few months kind of expiry dates. So, this these supply chains are not well suited for this category because इसमें
Hmm.
degradation बहुत quick है. मतलब it is like जैसे रिले रेस नहीं होती कि बैटन जल्दी पास कर दो, मतलब अगर लेके बैठ गए तो वो आपके पास ही सड़ जाएगी,
Hmm.
समथिंग
Hmm.
लाइक दैट.
Hmm. Hmm.
तो so that was kind of a starting point. And when I spent some time at the farm gate, like after leaving Grofers, so I realized ki, what farmers, are growing and what people want, उसमें भी disconnect है.
Right.
Uh, and then wastages are very huge, largely because, there are hops, and जितना time produce wait करेगा अलग अलग points पे उतना degradation होगा. So that
Right.
causes 35% कुछ wastage ही हो जाता है इतना. And that results in a price markup also, क्योंकि see, all of these intermediaries are in the business to make money. मतलब ऐसा
Correct.
नहीं होगा कि वो लॉस होगा तो वो खुद के ऊपर बेयर करेगा.
Correct. Of
स्टार्टअप तो है
course.
नहीं,
Yeah. He will
तो
pass
उसके
it.
पास
He or
पेड़
she
भी
will
नहीं है.
pass it on.
ठीक है, pass it on. तो eventually what happens is that the farmer realization मतलब 20-25% ही होता है of what the end consumer pays. और यही रीजन है कि काफी वेस्ट हो जाता है. फिर then logistics है, ये सब है. So
Yeah. Wastage is priced in. Any losses are priced in.
हाँ,
Everything's priced in.
प्राइस मार्कअप में होता है वो सारा.
Yes.
So, so that was when I felt yeah, this is a an interesting problem to solve. And fruits and vegetables is a big category. And I was like कि अगर हमने मतलब कुछ भी इसमें डेंट कर लिया तो the impact could be pretty huge. So that was broadly the thought process, and like a few learnings along the way. जैसे when we started, तो we were a B2B company, तो हम farm से ना जैसे छोटी दुकानों को देते थे produce. So one case in point there is कि जैसे we would जैसे इन वन सच केस हमने ना उसको जैसे ऑरेंजेस दिए कि भाई उसने पिछले दिन ऑर्डर किए 20-30 किलो ऑरेंज ऑर्डर किए, एंड हमने अगले दिन सुबह पहुंचा दिए. ही वुड यू नो take a look at the oranges, and then he would say कि look, I'm not going to take this from you. And we were like कि क्यों, we
Yeah.
agreed to the price, you said so much, we got you so much, we got you at the time that you had asked for. And he would be like कि look, buy. And he was a seasoned दुकानदार, फल
Right.
सब्जी के धंधे में मतलब कई सालों से था. So he looked at the oranges, he touched feel, and he said, look, I can tell that you have stocked them at your warehouse for at least a day, if not two. तो कहता है, look, my thesis is कि मैंने आपसे 20-30 किलो इसलिए करे थे assuming I have 2 to 3 days to sell. But now that 1 to 2 days you have taken, so मेरे पास तो अब एक आध दिन ही है. And I
Hmm.
know that in 1-2 days मैं इतना तो बेच नहीं पाऊंगा,
Right.
अब मैं ये लूंगा.
Wow.
तो तब ये समझ में आया कि शेल्फ लाइफ की इम्पोर्टेंस कितनी है, स्पेसिफिकली
It's
इन अ
such high
कंट्री.
sensitivity to
हाँ,
Very
specifically in
interesting.
a country like India where uh, cold chain nahi hai,
Right.
produce more under ambient temperatures. And so that was kind of the, I would say, after spending 4 years in B2B, फिर जब हमने B2C शुरू किया, so that core foundation was still the same. कि, how can we move it quickly from farm to home so that there's no degradation that happens along the way and the consumer gets the maximum shelf life.
Right.
कि वो अपने यहाँ 1 दिन रखे, 2 दिन रखे, वो उसकी मर्जी है.
Hmm.
But we should try to make sure that the produce spends minimal time, from farm to his home. So broadly, that is the thesis of OTP. Even today, where we move produce in as little as 12 hours from farm to home, and that naturally has a impact on the wastages. Where when conventionally you see 35%, in our supply chain you see 3%, 3.5%. So
Hmm.
10 times we are able to optimize, and that kind of becomes the secret sauce where people like the quality better because the freshness is better, and
Right.
because we save in wastages, that gives us the advantage that we can be competitive
On
also.
price. Correct.
हाँ, सही रेट में सही क्वालिटी दे पाए, that is the thesis
Right.
of the business.
Understand. How did you compress the timing or the TAT of your supply chain to less than a day? It's a pretty complex ops problem and a tech problem. Just at a high level, if you can share, how do you do that? What's the what are the moving parts?
See, broadly, if you look at the conventional, if you look at like the conventional physical जो supply chain है, which operates through small and medium shops, which is where all of us, or I would say at least like 90 and 99% of us buy our fresh produce. See, everyone operates on what we call a, a gut feel कि कल कितना बिकेगा, and he would then get that much produce, and typically a shopkeeper would get it early in the morning and he would say कि आज मैं दिन में शायद इतना बेच लूंगा, and he'll keep it.
Right.
And um, so you see that at every hop there is a lot of, I would say, what you call waiting for the next buyer. कि you bring it
Right.
on the basis of gut, and now you hope कि यार इतने टाइम में कोई अगला मेरे को मिल जाएगा. So you're kind of at every hop you're waiting for the next guy to whom you can pass the baton.
Right.
So what
Right.
we said was कि यार अगर हम demand ahead of time ही ले लें, so that we know who is the end guy and we move it quickly. So let's not create these intermediary hops. But उसमें the problem is that from a consumer standpoint, if I say कि आज आप मेरे को demand दो, मैं कल उसको arrange करूंगा, परसों पहुंचाऊंगा, then from a consumer standpoint it becomes too much of a foresight in terms of
Correct.
waiting for the produce. So typically we see here that is not what consumers are very comfortable doing. So now the thing is कि we also work on prediction. ऐसा नहीं है कि हम prediction नहीं करते. So two three things. One is that we try to, the different processes that are involved, we try to, instead of doing them serially, we try to do them in parallel.
Hmm.
ताकि parallelism से क्या आपका overall time shrink हो जाता है. So for
Hmm.
example, typically what people would do is that they'll get the produce at the warehouse, they'll wait for the orders to come, and when they come then they'll ship. If it is next day they'll ship next day, if it is day after they'll ship day after. So
Right.
your lapse time increases. On the other hand, what we would do is that we will predict yesterday कि आज हमें कितना बेचना है, and while the produce is in transit the orders are coming, so a lot of that order coming process and the transit is parallelized.
Hmm.
And by late in the evening when all the orders have come and the produce has come, quickly 5-6 घंटे के अंदर उसको warehouse से process करके पहुंचा दो. So by and large that is the thought process where
Understand.
instead of doing things serially you do them parallelly, and you use prediction as a mechanism to enable things to happen in parallel. तो जैसे हम करते हैं predict कि अगले दिन कितना बिकेगा, and when we do that prediction we have a lot of factors that we take into account. जैसे in this business price is a very important factor. जैसे Aviral, you would know कि 2 महीने पहले tomato prices had shot through the roof, right? यहाँ पे
Yeah.
मतलब मेरे ख्याल से बैंगलोर बॉम्बे में 200 कुछ थे, दिल्ली में 250 रुपए किलो था.
Right.
While conventionally it sells at 20 to 30 rupees a kg.
Hmm. Hmm.
So our demand, when price went like 8 to 10x, demand जो कि हम normally 10 टन बेचते थे, we were sub 2 tons a day. So demand is very influenced by price.
Right.
Um, it is very influenced by even weather. तो मतलब आप गर्मियों में मेरे को तरबूज खिला सकते हो, सर्दियों में आप मेरे को आधे रेट में भी दो तो मैं
नहीं
नहीं
खिला
लूंगा,
सकता, हाँ।
ये बहुत
करेक्ट।
ठंडा है, मैं नहीं ले
हाँ
सकता
हाँ हाँ
तरबूज।
हाँ।
So that is a factor. Then नवरात्र have just gone, तो नवरात्रों में अनियन नहीं लोग करते कंज्यूम, तो
हम्म।
you know it won't sell as much. So a lot of factors go into predicting, but then that prediction is used as a mechanism जिससे a lot of the serial processes are parallelized,
हम्म।
and फिर वो time जो है वो shrink हो जाता है. So that
हम्म।
is the process.
Understand. And you have a community group buying element as well to OTP. Can you talk about that in relation to price and getting a streamlined supply chain? How important is this aspect?
So that is it's a very core part of what we do. We call these people resellers,
Right.
and more than um, I would say their key objective in the system is to basically become an aggregation point so
Hmm.
that for the produce, and then get the produce in the hands of the consumers in a one, I would say, sorry, 2 to 3 hour time frame. तो
Right.
मतलब broadly इनका रोल ये रहता है कि um, the orders that consumers place, so they place on our app, the orders are grouped at a reseller level,
Hmm.
and the reseller gets these orders early in the morning, 5 बजे तक सबके पास normally पहुंच जाता है, and then quickly in 2 hours they'll distribute in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
So the way this works out very beautifully for us is that, see, typically most of these people are small business owners. मतलब जैसे कोई मेल है तो he would be running a store, कोई लेडी है she would be running a parlor or a boutique. What is common to them is कि their business starts at 9 a.m. 10 a.m.
Right.
and before that they are sitting on idle infra क्योंकि जगह होती है इनके पास, and they have 1 or 2 helpers also who help in their business, and they are also idle in the morning.
Right.
So our pitch to them is कि rather than हम ये points खुद बनाएं and वो सारा infra करें and वो लोग hire करें, so they already have infrastructure which is there. तो हमने इनको बोला कि आप कुछ परसेंटेज पे काम करो एंड आप अपना आइडल टाइम एंड आइडल इंफ्रा यूज करके मेक सम एडिशनल मनी.
Right.
So it kind of is like leveraging idle capacity which is available rather than rebuilding it and then paying much more for it. So
Understand.
it works out it is mutually beneficial क्योंकि हमें सस्ता पड़ जाता है
Correct.
एंड उनके लिए एक एडिशनल टॉप अप सोर्स ऑफ इनकम हो जाता है that does not impact their day to day activities.
Hmm. Is adding liquidity in the market, supply linkages, all those things. It's
Yeah,
very interesting. And
it's very very economical. तो हमारा जैसे लास्ट माइल हमें पड़ता है 11-12 रुपए. तो
oh
अगर
wow.
आप टिपिकल इकोनॉमिक्स करोगे, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल यू टॉक अबाउट क्विक कॉमर्स एंड यू नो तो उनमें क्या होता है, एक डार्क स्टोर होता है, एक राइडर होता है. तो राइडर, आई वुड से कपल ऑफ मंथ डाउन द लाइन तो 50 रुपीज जस्ट राइडर लेता था, एंड देन अनदर 30 रुपीज ऑट विच इज द डार्क स्टोर कॉस्ट क्योंकि उसमें रेंटल होता है,
Right. Sub
people
baked in
वगैरह
inventory
पकड़ते हैं.
cost, everything. Hmm.
So just that dark store, and I'm not talking about the warehouse behind that. I'm just talking
Hmm.
the dark store and the last mile वाला लड़का. So that वो मतलब 70-80 रुपए तो वैसे चला जाता है, एंड फॉर अस वो जो जगह है वो उसकी है, उसमें हमें कुछ करना नहीं है,
Hmm.
एंड लास्ट माइल है वो उसके आइडल लड़के करते हैं,
Very
तो ये
interesting.
मिला के 12 रुपए पड़ता है, 11-12 रुपए.
It is utilization of the space, already existing supply chains, everything. Fascinating. Very, very cool. And you have so many stakeholders in the mix. You have farmers, you have resellers, you have customers. How do you prioritize? How do you optimize? What are the constraints as a business? How do you manage this almost like three-sided or three-level business?
सी वैसे तो इट इज ऑल ऑफ दिस काइंड ऑफ इज मैनेज्ड थ्रू टेक्नोलॉजी दैट वी हैव डेवलप्ड इन हाउस.
Correct.
बट हाँ, आप ये बोल सकते हो कि एट डिफरेंट पॉइंट्स इन टाइम priorities can be a little different. Like for example, in general, तो there are certain, I would say, SLAs that we uh, as a company that we have set and that we are obliged to follow for all of the stakeholders, चाहे
Right.
वो farmer हो. तो for example, for a farmer, what is important is कि आप उससे price पहले agree करो. Then you communicate to the farmer कि this is the quality that we need so that there are no rejections when the produce reaches at the warehouse. मतलब कोई surprises नहीं होने चाहिए.
Hmm.
मतलब it could be simple things like कि जैसे अगर हम गोभी लेते हैं तो we don't want कि गोभी का फूल आपका 1.5 किलो का हो, वो बहुत बड़ा
Hmm.
है, consumers
Hmm.
लेते हैं, simple things like that. So it is important that the farmer knows कि the produce quality ballpark होता है, मतलब broad होता है, it's not like identifying a spec kind of a thing, but broadly उनको पता होना चाहिए. And then making sure that the payments happen on time, that is very very important to a farmer
Hmm.
कि payment में transparency हो and वो time पे पहुंचे, so that builds a lot of trust. Then for resellers it is important that there are some resellers um, who let's say would not be doing a great job at doing the last mile delivery,
Right.
मान लो थोड़ा late करते हैं, so as a consumer you would get pissed off कि
Hmm.
why is it not reaching me at the committed time. So there are incentives built into that, and as a reseller you have to communicate the importance of delivering on time and not messing up the consumer experience.
Right.
And then obviously from a consumer standpoint, as you take care of these things, your quality gets sorted, your timely delivery gets sorted. Then as a company, your technology, your app, your customer care, all of these are like front ends which a consumer sees. So you have to make sure कि consumer को all of these experiences are good, and um, I would say parallelly the pricing that a consumer sees he feels is fair. क्योंकि in this business prices change every day, and if you're too off than the offline market, the perception that you build is कि यार क्या इस कंपनी पे भरोसा कर सकते हैं, ये तो
Right.
मतलब फायदा
Hmm.
उठा रहे हैं, मतलब इस
Hmm.
कमोडिटी बाहर इतने की मिल रही है, इतनी ज्यादा बेच रहे हैं, and that could just be one commodity which could become a reason for distrust.
Right.
So I think these are the levels at which you manage various stakeholders, and you have to establish a balance. But having said that, there are different um, in your journey there are different times when you spend a little bit more focus on one than the
One.
other.
Right.
तो वो
Of
चलता
course.
रहता है. तो
Of
कभी
course.
जैसे on the consumer side you feel कि वो the retention numbers are maybe not वो हिल गया है थोड़ा सा, तो immediately सारा focus उधर चला जाता है. Then
Hmm.
sometimes at the farmer end you feel कि we are getting a lot of noise from there. So थोड़ा थोड़ा your focus can keep shifting, but broadly so you have to take everyone along.
Understand. What sort of scale are you at today? Over the last 2 3 years, did COVID accelerate, pandemic accelerate your business? Where are you at right
So,
now?
you just mentioned at the beginning of this. So last year we did, 115 crores. Right now we are more like at, 230 to 40 crores.
Understand.
Uh, yeah,
Revenue.
annualized. Yeah, annualized. That is the scale as of now. So we do about, 150 tons of produce every day. Out of that, 80% is in Delhi, and Bombay we have started recently. So that is about 20%. Um, Serving about 32,000 orders every day. So that is I would say the broad scale. So yeah, so every day we have like we have three warehouses, about 50 odd inward trucks that come, about 100 odd outward trucks that would go out. Um, so it's, and this happens every day. You can't
Right.
stop.
Right.
So हाँ, it's a pretty intense operation. If you visualize at a 10,000 foot level, तो बहुत सारा आगे पीछे बहुत सारे moving parts रहते हैं. But हाँ, it is an operation intensive business, but at the end of it, we feel that the impact that we are creating is,
Yeah, it's tremendous.
controlled.
Tremendous. Are you planning to scale to other cities, replicating what you have done in Delhi and a little bit in Bombay? Are you going to focus on metros only, or is there a plan to go to tier twos?
We are there in a few tier twos. So we are there in Bhiwadi, we are there in Meerut, we are there in
Okay.
Sonipat. So tier twos are also working well. In terms of scaling, so see this year, so it is already October, November. So इस साल तो नहीं, but next year we will then further scale. But broadly, for the first part, it will be more around metros, and reason वही है कि it's a bigger population that you
Hmm.
can address. And see, our value proposition also is not like a convenience. Like हम तो
Hmm.
price quality की बात करते हैं, and every Indian wants more value for their money. मतलब कौन नहीं चाहता.
Hmm.
तो हाँ, so an area where we can cater to a larger chunk of the population is entices us. So we will
Understand.
be first, going to the more metro cities first.
Understand. What is your plan for the next 3 to 5 years? Any sense on scale? Where do you plan to get?
In the next, see, abhi to we are, like I said, matlab, 240 crores odd annualized is where we are at. तो हाँ, मतलब अगले 3-4 साल में मतलब बहुत सारे और सिटीज करने हैं।
Hmm.
वो जो बकेट लिस्ट आप बोल रहे थे ना, तो उसमें
Yes.
दिस इज आल्सो वन आइटम।
Right. Add more.
एंड सो इमीडिएट ये है कि मतलब 1,000 करोड़ पे कितनी जल्दी पहुंच सकते हैं, एंड देन टेक दैट फर्दर अप टू $1 billion पे कितनी जल्दी पहुंच सकते हैं इन टर्म्स ऑफ
Right.
टॉप लाइन। तो हाँ, दैट इज एन ऑनगोइंग चार्टर।
Understand. And just from this revenue profile, is it like a low margin business or high margin? This is your take. What's the structure like?
फ्रेश प्रोड्यूस एक्चुअली अवेलेबल इज अ वेरी हाई
Very high
मार्जिन
margin
बिजनेस।
business, right?
देखो,
Hmm.
हाँ हाँ, सी वी ऑपरेट एट 38-40% मार्जिन पे भी ऑपरेट इन द
Amazing.
फ्रेश प्रोड्यूस कैटेगरी।
Hmm.
तो मार्जिन की कोई कमी नहीं है। सी, इट इज द
Right.
वेस्टेज दैट किल्स दोस मार्जिन्स,
Hmm.
एंड दैट इज व्हाट वी हैव बीन एबल टू ऑप्टिमाइज, एंड बाय वर्च्यू ऑफ दैट, सी, वी डोंट बर्न मनी एट एन ऑर्डर लेवल
Hmm.
एनीमोर। मतलब
Right.
at an order level we are now making money, so that is done for us. तो इट्स अ हाई मार्जिन बिजनेस। मतलब
Understand.
फल सब्जी इज अ अच्छा धंधा है। हाँ,
Hmm. I mean, compared to a grocery delivery business which you used to run, which had, I would say, 7-8%, maybe lower, it's basically like running 1,000 crore grocery delivery business. So 1,000 crore का 7-8% 80 crore है और आपका 40% भी 80 crore है. So it's like running 1,000 crore
हाँ, हाँ, you could say
grocery
that। देखो,
business from a
हाँ,
margin
टेक रेट्स आर
perspective.
हाई।
Yes,
बिल्कुल
understand.
बिल्कुल, टेक रेट्स आर हाई,
Understand.
एंड uh, the business also has other opportunities, like for example, you're based out of Bangalore or
Pune,
uh,
Pune and Bangalore.
Pune.
Hmm.
You're based out of Pune. So, see, even in Pune, for example, you will notice seasonal variation in
Correct.
prices and so on.
Correct.
So, growing the right thing at the right time can be a big leverage when, like, why did tomato prices increase? Because, जितनी भी farm belt से tomato आता था, सब
Correct.
में बारिश हो गई।
Correct.
अब नहीं मिल रहा भाई टमाटर,
Correct.
तो महंगा हो जाएगा। नाउ इसको कैसे सॉल्व करोगे? यू कैन से कि भाई या तो उन सब में बारिश ना हो, या
Hmm.
मैं कुछ ऑल्टरनेट मेरे पास बेल्ट्स हों जहां मैं उगाऊं, और वहां पे अगर नहीं हुई बारिश और बाकी सब में होगी, फिर भी मैं कुछ हद तक कंट्रोल कर सकता हूँ।
Hmm.
सो द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक इज दैट इन दिस बिजनेस, देर आर a lot of other potential leverages also that exist
Hmm.
to basically make money and address problems and so on. So
Understand.
yeah, very good business.
Awesome. Varun, just to close out and why we call this Founders Unfiltered, what's one piece of unfiltered feedback you've received in your journey as an entrepreneur that really changed your perspective? Brutal honest is good, and you have to pick one.
I don't know. Viral, see, इसमें see, I as a founder, what I have come to realize is कि, so this is like my third startup, and every startup you think कि अगली बार वो गलती नहीं करेंगे, अगली बार वो गलती नहीं करेंगे, राइट?
हाँ,
वो
fair.
जो जो रियल इंटेलिजेंस है, वो ये जैसे आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस भी तो यही होती है ना, यू
हाँ,
गेट डेटा सेट्स, यू प्रोड्यूस रिजल्ट्स, एंड दैट
right,
फीडबैक इनटू द लूप। तो
right.
रियल इंटेलिजेंस तो ऐसे ही काम करती है।
Hmm.
तो व्हाट आई हैव कम टू रियलाइज दैट कि मिस्टेक्स तो देखो आप करोगे, ठीक है,
Hmm.
यू कांट अवॉइड, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, मतलब कोविड आ गया, कुछ भी आ गया, कितनी, हाउ मेनी थिंग्स कैन यू प्रिडिक्ट, राइट? कि
Yeah.
मतलब अगली बार मैं ये गलती नहीं करूंगा, अगली बार मैं वो नहीं
Yes.
करूंगा। सो आई थिंक माय वन लर्निंग इज दैट यू टेल योरसेल्फ कि मैं गलती बहुत करूंगा और करता रहूंगा और मतलब करता रहूंगा, तो मैं, लेकिन मैं पुरानी करी हुई गलतियां दोबारा नहीं
नहीं
करूंगा। सो
करूँगा.
दैट इज,
हाँ.
एंड मैं गलती करके उससे बहुत जल्दी उठ के खड़ा हो जाऊंगा। सो
Hmm.
आई थिंक that is what I like to tell myself ki, you know in this world of startups, when you're trying to do things which no one else has done, so you will make mistakes, देखो आप उसको रोक ही नहीं सकते। तो I
Right.
think it is best to just tell yourself कि मतलब गलतियां होंगी, and you create an environment where you get constant feedback, ताकि एटलीस्ट आपको इनपुट आती रहे कि हाँ, मतलब मैं गलती कर रहा हूँ, और
Right.
फिर मैं उसको क्विकली पकड़ लूँ।
Correct.
तो मतलब I think that is how I look at it, मतलब if
Understand.
anyone like you're saying advice, तो advice यही है कि मतलब in this journey you will make
Be
mistakes.
ready to make
हाँ
mistakes.
हाँ, be
Mistakes
ready to make
will
mistakes.
will
बस ये
happen.
है कि कितनी जल्दी तुम उससे उठ के खड़े हो सकते हो और आगे बढ़ सकते हो will define
You.
success.
No, awesome. Varun, thank you so much. It was an amazing discussion, not just about your latest entrepreneurial journey, but also just the journey was super interesting. So thank you for sharing with us.
No, thank you, Aviral. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation as much.